Hello guys, welcome back to Anime Moments. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Against the Gods based on novel. So let's start explanation. When you're up, Yun Ching Hong said after he pondered in silence for a while. Me? Behind Yun Ching Hong, a callow youth dressed in the attire of the Duke Palaces pointed at himself as he wore a lost and panicked look on his face. Wen Ji was the son of Duke Shu, and his talent and strength were both uncommon. But taking account his profound strength at the second level of the Tyrant Profound Realm at the age of 29, he would be labeled as a bottom feeder among the creme de la creme of the illusory demon realm's young elites that were gathered here. Even among the West Wing, which was much weaker than the East Wing, he was still at the bottom. In the first round, Mu Hengyi had already suffered a crippling defeat at the hands of Zihuan. So for the second round, it stood to reason that a person who was sufficient to challenge Duke Zihuan should step up to the plate, because even if that person could not win, that person would still be able to retain some dignity in defeat. And if Wen Ji were to face an opponent who had completely dominated Mu Hengyi, he would only lose in a more spectacular fashion. Yes. Wen Ji, you'll be the one taking the second round. Yun Ching Hong turned to face him and declared with sunken brows, "The one you are about to face is indeed an opponent that is hard for you to fight, but as both of you are dukes of the illusory demon royal family, even if you lose in battle, you would have simply lost in power. However, you cannot lose your fighting spirit even before you have not even lost yet." Wen Ji ground his teeth together and quickly regained his equilibrium. He simply stated, "Understood. Even though you and Zihuan are separated by 3 levels, the two of you are still both overlords. Even if he wins, he will still have to exert himself. Your goal is to exhaust as much of his profound energy as you can. Remember, concentrate 30% of your power on offense and the rest on defense, and when you attack, only target his vitals when you are confident of delivering a critical strike. Also, no matter what he says, you must always maintain your cool. If you can do all of the above, then this match can be counted as a win." "I understand." Wen Ji nodded his head vigorously and flew into the air to land inside the arena. "Duke Shu Palaces Wen Ji, please give me your guidance." So it is Brother Wen Ji," Duke Zihuan said as he narrowed his eyes and smiled. "It really looks like your side can't find any proper candidates, because they actually sent you out as well. Even I am filled with pity for you right now. Wen Ji." Duke Zihuan extended his finger towards him and beckoned him with an incomparably contemptuous crook of that finger. "Come, feel free to attack whenever you want. Because if I can't subdue an amateur like you in 10 moves, then I won't have any face to continue living in this demon imperial city." Any member of the illusory demon royal family were individuals exalted above all others, so they would never have faced such humiliation before. So Wen Ji clenched both his fists tightly. He almost lost himself to rage, but he quickly recalled Yun Ching Hong's advice. There was a quick intake of breath as he sought to swiftly calm himself down, and after that, he did not speak as he planted both feet on the ground. A golden spear then appeared in his hands. As it pierced towards Duke Zihuan's chest, it produced a golden afterimage. At the same time, his domain was opened at full strength. Explosive Flame Domain. A deep red flame was concentrated at the tip of the golden spear as the gigantic energy of the domain suddenly explosively swelled up like a tsunami, amplifying the power of the spear as it streaked towards Duke Zihuan's body. Scarlet flames might have been the lowest form of profound fire, but the scarlet flames used by the illusory demon royal family was the lowest form of the golden crow's flames, and its strength was far superior to even the regular deep purple profound flames. "See how this duke will shatter your lousy spear." Duke Zihuan roared out arrogantly as he swung his scarlet blood blade, instantly producing 7 blood-colored blade beams. These extremely sharp blades beams carried a scorching heat and easily tore Wen Ji's domain apart. The sound of the blade splitting air was akin to a blade being scratched over glass. It was extremely ear-piercing. At this time, the golden spear that was streaking towards Zihuan suddenly slowed down, and after a violent shudder, it was instantly displaced. For of Duke Zihuan's blade beams that shot out of his blood blade struck empty air, but the other 3 clashed with the tip of Wen Ji's spear. After a chaotic and ear-piercing shattering sound, the 3 energy blades were completely neutralized and Wen Ji was pushed 10 steps back by the ensuing impact. Zihuan's eyebrows twitched, then let out a cold laugh. His body blurred and his blade danced like a dragon as he instantly unleashed a lightning-quick slash at Wenji. True Flame Shield. Bang! The scarlet blood blade made contact with the flame vortex that suddenly materialized in front of Wenji, but it only took a breath for this flame vortex to be torn. With the flashing of two blood-colored flashes, the flame vortex completely disappeared. As the scarlet blood blade plunged straight through, it smashed into Wenji's golden spear with a resounding clash. A heavy ring resounded in the air and Wenji's body swayed as blood leaked out from the corner of his mouth. However, he stubbornly endured and did not retreat. The scarlet blood blade had cut half an inch into the golden spear he had infused all of his might into, but it was still very far from cutting it apart. Zhuan had arrogantly yelled that he wanted to shatter Wenji's spear, but after 5 strikes, Wenji still managed to hang on. Wenji initially looked as if he had poured all his strength into a fierce assault, but he suddenly switched positions, avoiding Zhuan's attacks and reverted from defense to attack as quickly as he possibly could. Even though he had been injured, he had yet to retreat a single step. Zhuan's eyes narrowed and he yelled in a low voice, "You punk, collapse!" The flames on the scarlet blood blade suddenly flashed and an enormous energy exploded outwards as Zhuan put all of his strength into this strike. Wenji's face paled and his body was blown backwards, but Zhuan's blade followed after like a striking viper. In a short space of time, 3 streaks of thick, eye-piercing blood-colored blade beams flew out. Clang! Clang! Scree! After enduring the second blade beam, the golden spear finally flew out of Wenji's hand. The third blade beam slashed into his chest, cutting apart the profound energy shielding his body and the breastplate wrapped around his chest. But after it had cut through both the profound energy and the armor, the scarlet blood blade had no more power. Wenji flew through the air, but he managed to land solidly on his feet, and underneath the broken breastplate, his chest only had one thin red line drawn across it. Wenji made a gesture with his hand and the golden spear was recalled into his hand. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and chuckled, "It has already been 8 moves." Even though he had been beaten like a dog and only had the power to defend and attack, he had managed to solidly resist the attacks of the Zhuan who was 3 levels stronger than him in profound strength. And especially those last 3 blows, they were executed using Zhuan's full strength. And the boast that Wenji would be beaten down in 10 moves was yelled out for all to hear by Zhuan himself. So if he could not win in 10 moves, he would undoubtedly have slapped his own face. This bastard, Duke Zhuan ground his teeth silently, but gave off an air of disdain. "This duke was merely showing you mercy just now because I did not want you to lose in too ugly a manner. Did you really think that you are worthy to grace this Duke's scarlet blood blade for so long?" Duke Zhuan's eyes gained a fierce focus. He suddenly let out a low roar as the bloody light on the blade suddenly exploded forth. In an instant, Wenji's already unstable domain was directly shorn into 2 halves. The profound art that Zhuan cultivated was the blood flame blade and the weapon he used was also the blood-red scarlet blood blade. Even his energy blades were blood-colored, and it was to the extent that even the flames that he released materialized as blood flames. After his profound energy had suddenly flared up and exploded, the air within 100-meter radius of him was covered in blood-colored ripples of energy, and the entire arena seemed to be covered with a layer of dull-colored blood. The complexion of Wenji, who was the closest to Zhuan, suddenly changed. He doggedly gritted his teeth and positioned the golden spear in front of him. Duke Zhuan let out a deep, low yell as he raised the scarlet blood blade horizontally across. And the aura of his blade was sufficient enough to manifest an astonishing power, so it definitely had exhausted a suitably large amount of energy. But in order to defeat Wenji in 2 moves, he had no choice but to pay the price. The big words had already been spoken, so he had to defeat Wenji with this attack, no matter what. "Never flame strike!" Duke Zhuan yelled out as the scarlet blood blade lashed out, and in an instant energy blades crazily flew out as they enshrouded the entire area and rendered it asunder. Facing the blade beams and blood flames which seemed to cover the sky, Wenji heightened his focus to the extreme. With a loud yell, he retreated as swiftly as he could while concentrating all the profound energy he could muster into the golden spear. The golden spear began rotating rapidly and formed a giant flame barrier. Bang! It was as if a blood lotus had bloomed in midair, and below the Blood Lotus, the scarlet blood blade fiercely clashed together with the golden spear. The power of both the overlords surged wildly as it erupted forth, and a 33-meter-wide curtain of flame spread at the center of the Demon Imperial Hall. When Ji's flame domain had completely dissipated and his entire body flew out from within the curtain of flames along with his golden spear, heavily falling onto the ground. It was only after he tumbled and rolled on the ground many times that he was able to force himself up to his feet. The blood was flowing rapidly from one of his arms and he had ended up outside of the arena. When Ji, you have lost. You may withdraw. The little demon empress declared expressionlessly. As her voice fell, the people from Duke Shu Palace had already flown to Wen Ji's side, and they carried him back to their seats. At the same time, they excitedly praised him. You actually forced Duke Zihuan to use the Nether Flame Strike. Young Duke, you put up a good fight. Heh, Wen Ji managed to croak out a laugh. After which he closed his eyes and promptly fainted dead away. Duke Zihuan was about to reply, but Zifeng did not even give him an opportunity to open his mouth. What came at him instead was a series of rapid attacks that consisted of fierce flames and sword shadows. Zihuan had just used a huge skill, so he suffered from a temporary deficit of profound energy. Under these series of rapid strikes, he hurriedly retreated from his opponent in a fluster. But in the end, he was still the one who was ranked fourth among the illusory demon's 7 scions. Moreover, the other party only had a profound strength at the 3rd level of the Tyrant Profound Realm. His profound energy swiftly surged forward and the bloody light of the scarlet blood blade radiated out. Trash like you wants to win against this Duke. Keep dreaming. Bang 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 bang. He chained together 5 strokes of his blade and a huge blood-colored wave of fire was blasted out. Zifeng teetered on the edge of the arena as he was pushed all the way back, but he lifted his sword and charged forward once more as he fearlessly clashed swords with Zihuan. 20 clashes later, he was inevitably sent flying nearly 100 meters by Zihuan's blade and vomited 3 arrows of blood in succession. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and raised his sword anew. He let out a wild yell and thrust it directly towards Zihuan as the howl of his sword caused the entire Demon Imperial Hall to vibrate. Rainbow rend. It was as if a meteor had drawn itself across the space in the Imperial Demon Hall, and even the ones in the corners of the hall could feel a shocking sword intent. Facing Zifeng's sword strike, Duke Zihuan let out a wild and arrogant shout. He did not dodge or duck, and instead, took it head-on. Phantom Flame Strike Blade. Bloody light and sword shadows clashed chaotically, but the bloody light suddenly flashed, passing through layers of sword shadows and cut across Zifeng's body. Zifeng gave out a low moan and his long sword flew out of his hand as his entire person flew out as well as he landed in the seats which were more than 650 meters away. Zifeng has lost, it is still Zihuan who is victorious. The little demon empress said with furrowed brows. Within the East Wing, Zihuan's ability was only in the middle of the pack, but the 3 people who had been sent forth from the West Wing had all fallen under his blade. The expressions of all the people who were seated in the West Wing had become uglier and uglier, and at this time, a person from the Duke Palaces flew up into the air and sent a blast of fierce fire towards Zihuan. Duke Jiu Palaces Cheng Yang, take this. The 4th representative presented himself thusly and greeted Duke Zihuan with a fierce assault. Flames clashed and profound energy rumbled, as the middle of the great hall was filled with endless explosions and roars of power. The 2 opponents clashed fiercely for tens of rounds, but following the explosion of a cluster of blood flames, Cheng Yang directly fainted due to his serious injuries. The 4th representative of the West Wing had lost yet again. The overall strength of the East Wing was far stronger than that of the West Wing. This was something that everyone knew. But no one thought that the West Wing would lose this badly as soon as they got on the stage. The 4 people that went up there all lost miserably, and the other side only sent out Duke Zihuan, who was still in the arena. He was sweating and panting deeply, but aside from that, only his armor was slightly damaged, and there was no trace of bloodstains on him at all. The 4 consecutive wins just now apparently wasn't too difficult. And in the entire East Wing, there were more people whose strengths were on par with that of Duke Zihuan, such as Kai Yan Yenwu, Bai Jie, Lin Hanchuan, and people who were even stronger than him, such as Heli and B.A., the illusory demon 7 Science 3rd ranked Duke Hui Yi, 2nd ranked Duke Yuan Q, and the one who had already exceeded the others of the young generation, whose power was so terrifying it was abnormal, the head of the illusory demon 7 Science, Hui ran. This battle, how could it continue to proceed? Within the West Wing, those who originally held the attitude that losing was okay but would absolutely not yield, were heavily influenced at this moment in their heart and mind, and a deep sense of helplessness and desolation emerged. Who's next? Who's next to battle? Duke Zhuan swung his scarlet blood blade, faced the West Wing, and yelled insolently. He had really stolen the spotlight today after consecutively defeating the other party's guardian family's number 1 and 3 top-skilled dukes from the same generation as him. A 4-loss streak, that's pretty rough, Yun Che frowned and whispered. Mu Hengyi was instantly defeated because he was careless. There was too much difference between the strengths of the 3 young dukes just now and their opponent, so it was certain that they would lose. However, this Duke Zhuan's profound strength is already exhausted by over 60%. Hopefully we can win the next battle, Yun Qinghong said calmly. Patriarch Yun, let me fight this round, said Yang family's Yang Chenkong as he came forward. With 4 straight losses, there was no doubt that the 5th challenger would have to bear enormous pressure. Because if the West Wing lost again, then it would be extremely humiliating, and it would have a huge negative impact to their own reputation. But Yang Chenkong, who was also at the 3rd level of the Tyrant Profound Realm, requested to fight by his own will. Yun Che couldn't help but give him another look. The Yang family's strength was at the bottom of the 12 families, and Yang Chenkong's strength was also on the bottom of the geniuses in the 12 families, but in him, righteousness and assuredness that was inconsistent with his age was revealed. Yun Qinghong moved his brows and said, even though this Zhuan has defeated 4 of our people consecutively, his energy consumption wasn't that great. Be cautious. Mn, Yang Chenkong shook his head heavily, and answered with a simple syllable. He flew up and landed in the arena. Yang family's Yang Chenkong, may Duke Zhuan enlighten me. Yang Chenkong didn't attack immediately, and instead greeted him graciously. Oh, so it's the Yang family's young patriarch. Duke Zhuan won 4 battles consecutively, and the arrogance in his heart had been magnified countless times. He took a look at Yang Chenkong, and suddenly burst into laughter, ha 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 ha. This duke thought a decent competitor has finally shown up, but I didn't expect it would be the Yang family's young patriarch, and he's only a pitiful tyrant profound level 3. TSK, the Yang family has been at the bottom of the 12 families for 10,000 years, but didn't seem to be too far behind. How come, with your generation, it became this miserable? Looks like the Yang family is doomed as well. Presumptuous. As soon as Duke Zhuan finished speaking, a shout as loud as a clap of thunder rung, and it shocked Duke Zhuan, making his whole body shudder. His sight went dark, and he almost spat blood. The little demon empress slammed on the armrest of her throne heavily. Her eyebrows, which were shaped like new moons, slanted, and her freezing cold eyes stared directly at Duke Zhuan. It made his whole body come to a stop. It was as if he was frozen, and he didn't dare to move at all. The Yang family has guarded my demon emperor's bloodline for 10,000 years. They are loyal, devoted, and achieved numerous meritorious contributions. The generations of previous demon emperors all respected and valued the Yang family. You are merely a tiny junior from one of the Duke palaces. How dare you speak such nonsensical words towards the Yang family? Who gave you the courage? Duke Zhuan was one of the illusory demon 7 scions, and he had the power enough to look down upon all of the others in his generation, but how could he withstand the anger and momentum of the little demon empress? He was frightened, and his face immediately paled. His body was shaky, and he almost knelt down on the spot. Within the East Wing, Duke Zhuan's father Duke Zhao hurriedly stood up, bowed and said, "May the little demon empress's rage subside. My son was merely trying to lower his opponent's morale, and made an indiscreet remark. He absolutely did not have the intention of disrespecting the Yang family. Zhuan, hurry up and apologize to the little demon empress and the Yang family." Duke Zhuan promptly said. Zhuan made an indiscreet remark, and said something I shouldn't have said. May the little demon empress and everyone from the Yang family forgive me. With 4 straight losses for the West Wing, the little demon empress' mood naturally wasn't good. She scoffed softly and her rage finally settled a little, but she didn't say anything in response as she sat back to her throne and gazed at the center of the arena coldly. That burst of pressure that was heavy as a mountain finally disappeared. Duke Zhuan was secretly relieved. It was just then that he realized his whole body was covered in cold, wet sweat. However, Yang Chenkong obviously couldn't forgive him so easily. He looked calm and peaceful, but his eyes were full of anger. He grabbed his heavy profound spear, pointed the tip at Zhuan's throat, and said slowly, "Solely based on what you have just said, I bet my, Yang Chenkong's, lifetime of dignity and honor. Today, I must defeat you under my Yang family's imperious spear." "You?" Duke Zhuan sneered, and said in an extremely deep voice, "Even though I only have 40% of my strength right now, even if I only had 20% left, I could easily step all over you. I will not mention what will happen to your Yang family, but you, Yang Chenkong, the so-called Yang family's #1 genius of this generation, in the eyes of this duke, you have always been complete trash." Yang Chenkong was not angry at all. Instead he sneered and said, "Looks like you have never fought against people from our Yang family. Even though the level of profound energy of our Yang family has always been the lowest of the 12 families, that is because for generations, our family cultivated our profound energy second, and focused cultivating spears first. Our Yang family's greatest pride and wealth is not our family's profound art, but our imperious spear. You will soon know how you'll end up if you underestimate our Yang family. We're not called the #1 divine spear clan of the illusory demon realm, for nothing." Yang Chenkong's glare became as sharp as the tip of his spear. He swung his arms, and his silver-heavy profound spear burst out with lightning speed, like thorns. At that instant, a wave of violent wind swirled up with a sharp roaring sound. Facing Yang Chenkong's spear, Duke Zhuan gave a face of disdain. The profound energy of his scarlet blood blade rippled, and he let out a fierce slash accompanied by a blood-red light. Clang! The weapons collided and the deafening sound of metal rang in the hall. Although Duke Zhuan had exhausted half of his strength, in terms of profound energy density, his was still largely above that of Yang Chenkong. Yang Chenkong's heavy profound spear was reflected off directly and slightly bent by his scarlet blood blade. The corner of Duke Zhuan's mouth slanted, but before he could make a sneer, the heavy profound spear that was bounced out of the way and bent became like a boneless snake, then pierced directly towards his heart at an unusual angle. "What?" Duke Zhuan's heart stuttered as he quickly withdrew. His avoidance was extremely swift, but he was still grazed by the heavy profound spear. He could clearly feel his protective profound energy being severely torn, and it made an extremely harsh ripping sound. Yang Chenkong's dominating momentum burst completely at this moment. The heavy profound spear in his hand became like a flexible demon snake. It danced in the sky, filling it with multiple spear shadows, and trapped Duke Zhuan within them. Every prick, smash, thrust, and slash was all flawlessly on the spot, aimed directly at Duke Zhuan's weak points and vital spots. "Good spear technique," Yun Che exclaimed as he leaned forward. He couldn't help but be impressed. Yun Qinghong nodded slowly and said, "It is said, months for staves, years for punches, yet decades to learn spears. The art of the spear is difficult to train and master. If you don't put in enough hard work, it would be hard to have even a small achievement." The Yang family is hailed as illusory demon realm's #1 divine spear clan. Their clan's spear tactics are unpredictable. It could be said that they exerted the power of the spear to the maximum. Once they are able to handle it effortlessly, they could sweep through everyone under heaven, and even 10,000 soldiers cannot compare to them. They absolutely live up to the name of #1 divine spear clan. Even though Yang Chenkong's profound strength is weaker in comparison, in terms of his skill in the imperious spear arts, he has already entered the highest mastery. Among others of the same level, it is hard for him to meet a worthy foe. With Zhuan's current state, he can easily win against another peak-level tyrant profound realm, but it is extremely hard for him to win against Yang Chenkong, who is only a mid-stage third-level tyrant profound realm. The whizzing sound of the spear and the sound of the wind from the spear were piercingly sharp. Duke Zhuan kept increasing his profound energy. The bones in his entire body were making cracking sounds from him using his full power, as he deflected Yang Qingkong's attacks one after another, but it was only deflecting. He didn't have a chance to fight back, and the tip of the spear had already roared towards him once again. Just based on the weapon's characteristics, the spear's power and range of attack was better than a blade, but the flexibility, speed, and maneuverability were inferior to that of a blade. However, at this moment, the spear shrouding over Duke Zhehuan was swift as lightning, and as flexible as a living thing. It forced him several times into a frenzied state. One had the advantage in profound strength, the other had skills in draconic divine spear techniques. The two of them originally had a large level difference in profound strength, but now they were stalemated in the arena. The weapons collided countless times, space was disturbed for an extended time, and it continuously rippled. As the audience in the Great Hall looked upon this scene, the fight was distorted the whole time. Duke Zhehuan couldn't get rid of Yang Qingkong's spear shadows throughout the fight, and for the time being, Yang Qingkong also couldn't really hurt Duke Zhehuan. Among all the Duke palaces, there were also many who used spears, and Duke Zhehuan had gone against many who used a spear as a weapon, but he hadn't fought against anyone from the Yang family. He'd never thought the power of the Yang family's imperious spear was this astonishing. The heavy profound spear in Yang Qingkong's hands attacked and defended freely according to his will. When he attacked, his spear sprung like the wind and clouds, with its momentum able to swallow mountains and rivers. It made the Duke's movements all seem sluggish, as it suppressed both his blade and flame. When Yang Qingkong defended, it was like placing an iron chain across the river, it was impervious. The two of them exchanged over 100 blows, but none of them could do anything to the other. Yang Qingkong was calm and steady throughout, but Duke Zhehuan was getting impatient. Before the battle, he mocked Yang Qingkong harshly, even insulted the whole Yang family, got scolded seriously by the little demon empress, and was humiliated hard. Now, after 100 exchanges, he still wasn't able to defeat this person whom he had ridiculed in front of everyone. Instead, he was being suppressed, and he was extremely aggrieved and furious. Duke Zhehuan gritted his teeth, and suddenly roared deeply. The light on his scarlet blood blade intensified, making a fierce ripping sound, tearing up the space. This strike was exactly the same, blood flame strike, that defeated Mu Hengyi before, but because he had already exhausted much of his profound strength, the power of the blood flame strike was far weaker than when it defeated Mu Hengyi. A terrifying force headed towards Yang Qingkong, as he positioned his spear horizontally and entered a defensive stance, causing the power of the blood flame strike to be decreased by 70%. At this moment, his eyes were flickering in the attack's brilliance, but he didn't retreat and disarm the 30% power left of the blood flame strike. Instead, he turned the body of his spear, let the blood-colored reflection of the blade graze his waist, and the heavy profound spear became like a dragon flying out of the seas. It created an unstoppable profound energy storm that passed through the blood flame blade, and stabbed Duke Zhehuan viciously on the shoulder. The instant the tip of the spear touched his shoulder, all of the power immediately collected at the spear tip, and passed straight through Duke Zhehuan's protective profound energy and armor. Phut! A splash of blood splattered out from Yang Qingkong's waist, and the tip of the heavy profound spear was stabbed deep into Duke Zhehuan's shoulder, stuck in between his shoulder blades. A sense of pain came from his left shoulder, and it, along with the feeling of humiliation, stimulated Duke Zhehuan's ferocious personality. His eyes widened and emitted a radiance of craziness. Go to hell! Duke Zhehuan's whole body instantly started burning in blood-red flames, as if he just walked out of a pool of blood. Watching his movements, the Yang family's patriarch, Yang Zijing, was shocked and became pale. He yelled loudly, "Conga, dodge it, quick! Blood cage nether flame!" The blood-red flames suddenly burst open, and a terrifying aura shrouded Yang Qingkong as his pupils shrank, but he didn't choose to abandon his spear and retreat. Instead, he gritted his teeth, and poured all the profound energy he had into the heavy profound spear. The next second, it was as if his chest had been slammed with 10,000 sledgehammers, as he instantly lost consciousness. Boom! The blood flame exploded, and Yang Qingkong was thrown out backwards into the distance. When he was caught by Yang Zijing in the air, his chest was already torn and bloody. But Yang Qingkong wasn't the only one who was thrown out backwards in the blood flame. In the instant that the blood flame exploded, the heavy profound spear that Yang Qingkong poured the last of his powers into, pierced directly through Duke Zhuan's shoulder, and poked open a real, transparent hole. The rest of his power pounded Duke Zhuan high up in the air, causing him to crash into the east wing with his blood sprinkling all over. That heavy profound spear fiercely pierced the seats in the east wing, without any hint of blood on its surface. Chen Kong. Zhuan. Both sides were extremely shocked. None of them thought that the two of them who were originally at stalemate would meet such a tragic outcome in a single instant. To ignite those streaks of blood flames, Duke Zhuan did not hesitate to exhaust his entire body's profound strength, and his body was pierced through with a transparent hole. It was impossible for him to continue fighting. But Yang Chenkong was no better than him. The front of his flesh was all torn, and his internal organs were all shifted. If it weren't for his strong willpower, he would have been unconscious already. However, it was impossible for him to continue fighting. This battle, Yang Chenkong and Duke Zhuan had achieved mutual destruction. Brothers of the Under Heaven clan, thank you for your help. Facing the heavily injured Yang Chenkong, Yang Zijing was fairly calm. Don't worry, with us here, your son will definitely be all right, two elders from the Under Heaven clan said as they nodded. They reached out their palms, and a dark green light shrouded Yang Chenkong's wounds. Under the natural healing power of the elven race, even though Yang Chenkong's injuries were serious, they quickly stabilized. He took a deep breath, and said with shame, "Father, your child's cultivation was too immature. I let you down. Don't blame yourself." Yang Zijing said reassuringly, "After all, Zhuan is ranked 4th in the illusory demon 7 science. There's a huge gap between you and him. To have such a result, Father is already very proud of you. Concentrate and calm down now, don't talk anymore." Duke Zhuan was finally defeated, but none of the expressions on anyone from the West Wing eased up in the slightest. Because it took 5 people for them just to beat Duke Zhuan. Sigh, the difference in strength between the two sides is too great. Many in the hall were sighing. Yes, I don't understand why the Yun family accepted the challenge. Even though they would rather lose the battle than lose their dignity, when losing this miserably, what dignity is left? There's also a Su family. I heard that Su Zhizhan from the Su family is one of the best in the 12 family's young generations. He should be able to recover some disadvantages. Come on, Hellion BA from the Hellion family, 2nd and 3rd rankers of the illusory demon 7 science Duke Huiyi and Duke Yuan Q, none of them are weaker than Su Zhizhan. And 1st ranked Duke Hui Ran, it's not exaggerated at all to say that just his strength alone is enough to beat the 12 people from the other party single-handedly, a citizen of Demon Imperial City stated while he shook his head. Clap, clap, clap. Duke Huai stood up as he clapped and he said while laughing, "Marvelous, that was truly a marvelous battle. I would never have thought that in this series of contests, there would actually be a scenario where both contestants would defeat each other. It is truly exciting to the point where this Duke simply could not have imagined it." However, Duke Huai looked directly at Yun Qinghong and laughed, "Are you sure your side still wants to continue? You have gone through roughly half of your representatives just to take down one of ours. This result is truly regrettable and this Duke simply does not feel at ease continuing this contest any longer." However, from this Duke's understanding of Patriarch Yun, no matter how ugly Patriarch Yun's loss turns out to be, he will still resolutely soldier on, correct? Ha 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 ha. Yun Qinghong also started laughing. "Duke Huai, you truly understand this Yun well. However, your words are seriously puerile and ridiculous. Our contest has merely just begun, but you have already asserted that we have lost. Isn't it a bit too early to say that?" Ha ha ha. Duke Huai let out 3 great laughs. This truly sounds like the words that you, Yun Qinghong, would say. Then let this Duke clearly see where your confidence comes from, Yun Qinghong. But what this Duke really wants to see is how much longer your arrogance can last. Wenbo, you are our side's 2nd representative, so you're up next. The words, 2nd representative, was heavily emphasized by Duke Huai and the mockery in his tone could be heard by all. As his voice fell, a tall and big young man flew up in the air and landed in the arena. Illusory Demon 7 Science Rank 5, Duke Wenbo. And just like Duke Zhuan before him, he was also at the Tyrant Profound Realm Level 5. And from the west wing, another person immediately took the air as well, and he landed in front of Duke Wenbo. This person was also the strongest person sent out by the west wing so far, also amongst the illusory demon 7 scions, the 6th-ranked Duke Yongyi. Both people belonged to the illusory demon royal family, and both of them were also part of the illusory demon 7 scions, so their strengths were not far apart. This was in addition to the fact that they had often dueled many times and had also gotten used to each other's golden crow flames and profound arts. So the battle between the two of them was exceptionally ferocious as they fell into a stalemate, and it was only after 30 minutes of battle that the winner was finally decided. Duke Wenbo barely scraped a victory while Duke Yongyi fell in defeat. The West Wing lost once again. And they were caught in the miserable scenario where they were at 5 losses and 1 draw. Even though Duke Wenbo had won, all of his moves and hidden cards had been played. He had sustained many wounds in battle, and his profound energy had been greatly exhausted. So in the 7th contest that followed, he fell to a young duke from the West Wing who still found him rather challenging. The 8th match, West Wing's Duke He Song versus the Lin family's Lin Hanchuan, it was Lin Hanchuan's complete victory. The 9th match, West Wing's Duke Jiao Rong versus the Lin family's Lin Hanchuan wins yet again. At this point, the West Wing where the Yun family was at had a record of 1 win, 1 draw and 7 losses. And there were only 4 people left who were still eligible for battle. The 10th match, Illusory Demon 7 Scions rank 7, Duke Yu Palace's Duke Ying Nan versus Lin Hanchuan, Duke Ying Nan wins. The 11th match, Duke Ying Nan versus Nangong family's Nangong Yang, Duke Ying Nan achieved a Pyrrhic victory. And while the West Wing had finally won 2 consecutive victories for the first time after their last 2 fights, not a single person from the West Wing had an expression of joy on their face. Even though Ying Nan had won, he had completely exhausted his strength, so he was bound to lose the following match. And at that time, the West Wing would be down to 3 people, while the other side would still have 8. Moreover, the other side's Elite 4 had not even shown their faces yet. The 12th match, Duke Ying Nan versus Bai family's Bai Jie, it was undoubtedly Bai Jie's complete victory. The West Wing was only left with 3 competitors, Su Zhizhan, number 6 under heaven, and the Yun family's unknown representative. In the 13th match, number 6 under heaven took the stage. The elven race possessed the strong ability to use profound bows while having abundant innate talent, but the nature of their profound energy determined that their attack power would not be too high. Moreover, as contests of this nature took place within a confined boundary of an arena, the strength of their profound bows would also be greatly restricted. So once it was number 6 under heaven's turn, he would be subject to an immediate and irreversible disadvantage, and despite struggling bitterly, the miracle of the weaker triumphing over the stronger did not occur. He was defeated by Bai Jie. So far, the 2 sides had fought 13 matches and the West Wing had lost 10 representatives while the East side had lost a mere 4. And besides Bai Jie, who was currently representing the East, they still had 7 other young elites who had yet to battle. Among these young elites were the Xiao family's Xiao Donglai and the Jiufang family's Jiufang Yu, who were at the Tyrant Profound Realm level 4, the Kaiyang family's Kaiyang Yenwu, who was at the Tyrant Profound Realm level 5. The Kaiyang family's Kaiyang Yenwu, who was at the Tyrant Profound Realm level 5, the Hellion family's Hellion Ba, who was at the Tyrant Profound Realm level 6, and the ones ranked number 2 and number 3 among the illusory demon 7 scions, Duke Yuan Qiao and Duke Hui Yi, who were also at the Tyrant Profound Realm level 6. There was still even the head of the illusory demon 7 scions, Hui Ran, whose profound strength had actually reached the astonishing level of Tyrant Profound Realm level 8. The other side was only left with Su Zhizhan, who was at the Tyrant Profound Realm level 6. As for the Yun family, they did not even have any proper candidates to send out because among their young generation, the strongest was only at the Tyrant Profound Realm level 2. This contest between both sides did not have any suspense even from the start, and no one felt that the current scenario was the least bit odd. In fact, everyone felt that the side the Yun family was on had just lost in a much too miserable fashion. The various great powers within Demon Imperial City gave silent sigh. This was only a competition between the young generation of both factions, and even though it could not be indicative of their true strength, it was clearly sufficient to demonstrate just how dominant Duke Huai's faction was, and his faction possessed a strength that completely suppressed their opposition. And this contest, which was deliberately arranged by Duke Huai, was arranged with two goals in mind. The first goal was to drive out the Yun family. The second goal was to use pure strength to oppress and cruelly destroy the other faction's presence, to grind the dignity and prestige of the other faction, the Little Demon Empress included, completely under their heel. And once the Yun family had been expelled, the Little Demon Empress would not have the ability to contend with Duke Huai anymore. Once that happened, Duke Huai would only need an opportunity, whether natural or manufactured, to usurp this illusory demon world demon emperor's throne. The faces of all the people on the West Wing were shrouded in a cloud of gloom. Once number 6 under heaven had lost to Bai Jie, they only had 2 people left that were eligible to do battle, and realistically in their hearts, it was akin to only having 1 person left. This was because the Yun family really did not have a single person among their young generation who was up to task. Su Xiangnan slowly let out a sigh. He patted Su Zhizhan on the shoulder as he said, "Zhizhan, the conclusion has already been reached and our defeat has already been determined. In fact, it has been determined from the very start. It's your turn now. Whether we can get back any of our dignity is now up to you and you alone. I understand, but not matter the result, I will definitely give it my best shot." After he had finished speaking, Su Zhizhan grabbed his weapon and soared into the sky, landing in front of Bai Jie, who had just won over number 6 under heaven. He pointed his sword straight, and the aura that radiated out from him was incomparably rich and strong. He did not even show one hint of weaknesses in regards to the great failure of his own faction as he declared, "Su family's Su Zhizhan presents himself. I have never been willing to cross swords with a woman, so it would be better if you simply surrendered and got off this stage." He faced Bai Jie, who was clothed in white and had a figure that was taller than most women. Her face was flushed red and she faintly showed signs of tiredness as it was made clear that her recent battle with number 6 under heaven was not easy at all. But upon hearing Su Zhizhan's words, she let out a cold laugh and said mockingly, "Your side has lost in a completely miserable manner, so I don't really know where you are getting the nerve to speak so arrogantly from. And right now, you especially don't have the right to look down on us women." No, I think you're mistaken there," Su Zhizhan said softly as he gave an extremely contemptuous laugh. Su Zhizhan, will definitely never look down on women. I only look down on ungrateful and traitorous women who are no better than mongrels. You courting death." Those venomous words caused Bai Jie to erupt in fury, and her jade sword exploded forward. In an instant, the shadow of an enormous white tiger appeared behind her. The image of this white tiger roared at the heavens, and the sound of its roar spread through all 4 corners of the great hall, causing it to tremble. And in that instant, a strong gale rose up and surged violently. This howling gale was sufficient enough to suppress the roar of the white tiger, and the arena seemed to be engulfed in thousands upon thousands of windstorms. It's the Bai family's tiger roar domain. Bai Jie's domain instantly radiated outwards to envelop the entire arena. Su Zhizhan's hair and clothes were flying wildly as the wind howled all around him. However, his body was nailed to the ground, unmoving. Then, he raised a long sword in his hand and attacked, his sword sweeping forward. Within Bai Jie's domain, besides herself, the strength and speed of every other person would be heavily restricted, but the speed of Su Zhizhan's sword was still as swift as a bolt of lightning. The might of his sword swept away all of the violent hurricanes around him as a huge tear was immediately formed in Bai Jie's domain. Su Zhizhan sprang forward, and every step he took tore a rip in Bai Jie's domain. The Bai family and Su family both use the sword as their weapon, and they both cultivate wind attribute profound strength. Bai Jie's and Su Zhizhan's profound strength is not too far apart, but in terms of their understanding of the laws and nature of wind profound energy, Su Zhizhan is vastly superior to Bai Jie, so her domain does not pose any threat to him at all. Yun Qinghong said in an admiring voice. At this time, Su Zhizhan had already reached Bai Jie's side, and the body of his sword surged with a dull green wind spiral. This wind spiral may have been infinitesimally small compared to the huge domain of howling winds, but nevertheless, it was strong enough to push aside all of the howling winds surrounding it. Reap! Su Zhizhan's straight thrust violently tore apart the domain in front of him. Bai Jie also raised her jade sword and blocked Su Zhizhan's sword with a loud clank. Immediately, she felt her arm go numb and an acute pain lanced through the flesh, joining her thumb and her forefinger. Her body swiftly flew backwards and her jade sword almost flew out of her hand. Even if she was at full strength, she would not be Su Shizhan's match, much less right now, when she had already exhausted a good portion of her profound strength. Su Shizhan did not give her any breathing room. His body flicked as he instantly pressed forward. His body was like a howling gale and his sword was like a thunderbolt. Every slash was accompanied by a howling noise that practically tore the eardrums. The wind spiral on his sword was also expanding rapidly, and after Bai Jie had crossed swords with him continuously, her arm was completely numbed. Her tightly gripped right hand was already stained with blood from the torn webbing between her finger and thumb. Even her cheeks were scored with several long wounds that were inflicted by his sword wind. "You dare to harm my face? I will definitely not let you off." Bai Jie only noticed the pain on her face once she felt it, and this caused her to react like a tiger who had its tail stepped on. She instantly went berserk and roared in fury. The huge figure of a white tiger once again appeared behind her as a whirlwind that was more than 30 meters tall surged up all around her. Su Shizhan's eyes flashed and he unexpectedly jumped into the midst of Bai Jie's whirlwind. He did not wait for her to unleash her all-out attack, but instead slapped his sword across her waist. This whip of his sword produced an incomparably loud and extremely clear ring. The whirlwind that was still forming around Bai Jie's body vanished in an instant. Her entire body spun wildly about like a violently spinning top and she flew directly out of the arena. Women, no matter how strong they still can't accomplish anything big. Su Shizhan stood where he originally was and somberly shook his head as he muttered to himself. Bai Jie collapsed to the ground as she had been turned topsy-turvy. Her jade sword had also flown off to some unknown location. "Su Shizhan. I'm going to have it out with you." In front of all the heroes of the realm, a slap of her opponent's sword had sent her flying. As the strongest member of the Bai family in her generation and one of the most prominent talented women in the entire illusory demon realm, she had never suffered such humiliation before. She hefted her sword once more and with a yell, gathered herself as she prepared to rush Su Shizhan. "That is enough." Bai Jie's charging figure suddenly stopped as an invisible energy barrier appeared before her, not letting her move an inch forward. The Bai family's patriarch Bai Yi stood up and restrained Bai Jie, saying, "You have already lost." In front of all who are present, what kind of behavior is this? It was only then that Bai Jie realized she had already fallen outside the arena limits. She grit her teeth and shot Su Shizhan a fierce look, but she could only obediently return to her seat after that. Su Shizhan had defeated Bai Jie. This conclusion was not unexpected in the least. He had cleanly defeated Bai Jie without stretching the fight out, and he clearly managed to preserve most of his profound strength. He stood in the middle of the arena and looked at the east wing seats. Without waiting for a representative to come forth, he raised his sword, pointed it directly at someone who was sitting among the Hellion clan, and said in a clear and haughty voice, "Hellion BA, do you dare to come out for a match?" This was the first time since this contest had begun that someone had directly challenged an opponent. And the one whom Su Shizhan challenged was actually the other person who was also termed as the strongest of 12 families' young generation, Hellion BA. Su Shizhan was extremely clear that in this contest, the side he represented was undoubtedly going to suffer a crushing defeat. And in order to get back some of their pride, the best method was to defeat the one who was vying with him for dominance at the top, Hellion BA, and clearly stake his claim on the title of number one. Under the expectant gazes of all who were present and being challenged by a rival who was equal to him in both fame and ability, it was only natural for Hellion BA to rise to the occasion. Because even if he did not want to, he would have to, or else the whole world would think that he was scared of Su Shizhan. He stood up without a hint of hesitation, flew to the spot in front of Su Shizhan and graced him with a cold smile. "Su Shizhan, it looks like you want to bring this contest to a swift conclusion so you can scram back to your seat with your tail between your legs. If that's the case, I definitely will not disappoint you. The one who's going to scram is you." Su Shizhan interjected coldly. "Ha ha." Hellion BA grinned from ear to ear. "The only thing that's impressive are your words, you pitiful loser. To think that you are actually as famous as me, Hellion BA. Woe is me. You have just fought a match with Bai Jie, so you have definitely exerted yourself, even if it is just a little bit. TSK, don't worry, Hellion BA, will not take advantage of you in any way. I will give you 15 minutes to recover because I do not want anyone to doubt my victory over you. Because there can only be one true, number one. There is no need. Su Shizhan's gaze grew cold and he gave a contemptuous bark. Equals? Perhaps I could still accept that in the past, but right now, you are not worthy. To compare me, Su Shizhan, to an ungrateful and traitorous mongrel like you, it's simply the greatest form of humiliation. Why would I need any rest to beat down a mere lackey like you? Su Xiangnan had always been upright and principled. Even though his son was filled with arrogance, he had inherited his father's traits completely in this point. He was filled with an extreme revulsion and disgust at the betrayal of the 7 great families and the various duke palaces. Hellion BA's face instantly grew dark, and he said, I had originally wanted to give you some leeway, but you asked for it. HMPH. Su Shizhan gave a cold snort and couldn't be bothered to speak any further. He tightened a grip on his sword and slowly advanced forward with a gaze as cold as ice. His body began to emit a strong sword force as squalls of wind started to quickly circulate around him. With every step he took, the howling winds increasingly raged, as his sword force grew more and more boundless. After he had taken 10 steps, countless of sword shadows danced amidst the great storm. This is the Su family's stellar wind sword domain. Yun Qinghong explained to Yun Che, it is the final form of the Su family's divine wind sword domain. It combines strong winds with sword force and its killing power is extremely strong. Once the weak are pulled into this domain, they will be broken into tiny pieces. If Su Shizhan is going to display his stellar wind sword domain right off the bat, it means that he has resolved to go all out. With a roar of thunder, a jet-black sword had appeared in Hellion BA's hand. Lightning crackled all over the black blade as a domain of jet-black lightning began to slowly radiate forth from his body. But before this domain could fully form, a gust of wind hissed in his face and Su Shizhan dashed forward, quick as a flash of lightning. Both swords clashed in the air as both domains also instantly collided together and intersected. Bang, bang, boom, boom, boom. In the blink of an eye, both people had already exchanged tens of blows. Su Shizhan's sword strokes filled the air and it looked like an entire galaxy of stars was falling to the earth, while Hellion BA's black sword thrashed about like a raging flood dragon. The two powerful domains tore at each other like a pair of mad beasts, struggling to tear and devour the other. The match between Su Shizhan and Hellion BA had quickly reached the boiling point. The profound strength of both contestants also began to swiftly rise as they engaged in fierce combat, gradually rising to peak levels after they had finished their initial probing strikes. As wind howled and thunder roared, the match had already gone through hundreds of rounds as both Su Shizhan and Hellion BA were locked together in a crazy and frenetic battle, but neither could overpower the other. Their domains kept shrinking and expanding crazily at the same time while the sword energy, wild gales, and galloping lightning had even extended beyond the arena. If it wasn't for the powerful families and duke palaces who used their profound strength to form a barrier around the arena, the entire Great Hall would have been swallowed up by the mass of sword energy, wind and lightning. How powerful are they really a part of the young generation? A few of the youths who were visiting Demon Imperial City for the first time had long become stunned into insensibility. Being able to qualify to attend this 100-year reign ceremony naturally meant they were the best of the best within their own territories. But the fight before them completely and utterly demolished any arrogance or self-confidence they had possessed before. Even though they had always known Demon Imperial City possessed the highest level of profound strength within the entire illusory demon realm, they had never dreamed that the difference was actually this huge. These two were clearly around the same age as the rest of them, but when they all compared their own ability to the two, it was literally the difference between heaven and earth. Even their most respected and admired seniors did not nearly possess this kind of strength. This is the true strength of the 12 guardian families. An old practitioner said as he sighed deeply in admiration. Within the guardian families, becoming an overlord before 30 is the bare minimum standard. From where we come from, to be able to have a monarch is something that will garner the admiration of everyone around us and is worthy of 1,000 years of glory. But in the 12 guardian families, a monarch is merely one of the qualifications required to be an elder. especially the Yun family of 100 years ago. Just counting the high-level monarchs who were at least at the 7th level of the sovereign profound realm, there were already a whole 11 people. At these words, all these youths were simply struck dumb and no one uttered a single word for a long time. Su Shizhan's sword was as fast as flowing light and the howling wind sword beams fell like torrential rain. In comparison, Helion Ba's sword was slower, but it was extremely strong and ferocious. Every stroke of Helion Ba's sword was enough to shatter several sword beams that Su Shizhan shot out. Su Shizhan's face had been calm and frozen from start to finish, but Helion Ba's face became more and more twisted, because the Su Shizhan that was before him was practically a madman. Every move and every stroke he made seemed to be directed at a bitter enemy who owed him a huge debt of blood. 90% of his profound energy was focused on offense and only 10% was used for defense. Under this kind of reckless and life-endangering fighting style, even though none of the combatants had suffered serious injuries, as they were caught in the midst of the crisscrossing and devastating stellar wind sword domain and exploding lightning domain, Su Shizhan's body had already been charred black, while sword winds carved more than 100 bloody wounds into Helion Ba's body, turning his breastplate into a beehive since long ago. Boom! After a heavy attack, both combatants' domains collapsed simultaneously. Su Shizhan and Helion Ba shot out like two cannonballs, then landed in two separate corners of the arena. Helion Ba landed on the ground, his profound energy leaking, as the 100 wounds on his body immediately started gushed blood, dyeing his clothes and most of his body red. Even though they were all small wounds, such a large amount of blood was enough to cause him to go berserk. He gritted his teeth, stretched out his hands to viciously tear off the clothes on his body, and roared, "Su Shizhan! Are you really looking for a quick death?" Similarly, Su Shizhan's body was covered with wounds. While both of them had battled fiercely in the intermingled wind and lightning domains, it was only after they had separated that the audience noticed their wound-covered bodies, and realized that the two were not engaged in a fierce battle. It would be better termed as a bitter struggle. Even though neither of the two had suffered any serious injuries, their crazy fight had struck fear into the hearts of the audience. Su Shizhan didn't seem like he was in a competition, it looked as if he was putting his life on the line. Because this was a fight he definitely could not lose. Why? Are you scared of death? Su Shizhan asked as he coldly laughed. Frankly speaking, Helion Ba was indeed a little bit scared, because any sensible person would be scared of a maniac who was putting his life on the line. His face became dark and sinister, as his heart became patient no longer. He roared in a low voice, "Since you want to die, let me fulfill your heart's desire." As his voice fell, Helion Ba gripped his sword in both hands. The black sword immediately buzzed as lightning began to revolve around it. In an instant, the space surrounding the black sword suddenly began to distort, and even Helion Ba himself was caught in this fiercely distorted space, as the ghastly ripples of distorted space surged in every direction. The aura emitted by this sword caused the complexion of every person within the Great Hall to faintly change. Su Shizhan, did you really think that you had the right to be called the strongest along with me? Helion Ba's body had also distorted as space rippled all around him. An oppressive aura which seemed to overturn the heavens engulfed the arena and the Great Hall, even the surrounding sources of light seemed to go dim. He didn't release his lightning domain, only a mild halo of lightning covered the body of his sword, but the deafening sound of thunder which seemed to come out from nowhere rang through the entire Great Hall. The heavens have bestowed upon our nine-headed demon snake clan a strong profound lighting and a rock-solid body that you humans can never compare with. And under this sword, you are only fit to bend your head and kneel. Scram! Helion Ba's voice exploded as he leaped high into the air. In midair, his body shimmered and the image of huge snake suddenly materialized. The huge snake had 9 heads and all 9 heads howled at the sky. Then, the mouths of all the heads opened wide, as they rushed down to bite Su Shizhan at the same time. In the next instant, these 9 snake heads suddenly disappeared, and morphed into 9 Helion Ba's that simultaneously slashed their swords towards Su Shizhan. Netherworld Lightning Emperor Slash. Helion Ba could actually use this move, and to top it all off, it is the complete Netherworld Lightning Emperor Slash. The Yang family's patriarch Yang Zijing stood up abruptly as he said in an alarmed voice, "This was not an attack that can be executed at the 6th level of the Tyrant Profound Realm. Su Shizhan is in real danger now. He turned his head to look at Su Xiangnan, but he discovered that he was still seated in his seat. While the look on his face was grave, it seemed to not be anxious. As a boundless aura descended from above, everyone in the great hall felt a deep feeling of suffocation. Those who had a comparatively weaker profound strength paled, as they felt like their chest was about to crack open. If the effect that this attack had on the audience who were on the fringes of the battlefield was already this horrifying, the power that this sword held was simply unfathomable. Su Shizhan raised his head and looked at the 9 swiftly descending figures with apathetic eyes. The stellar wind sword domain soundlessly rose up, then swiftly spread out. What the heck is Su Shizhan doing? Shouldn't he be preparing to either defend or dodge? What is he opening that stellar wind sword domain for? Su Shizhan turned a deaf ear to all of the yelling around him. Right when the stellar wind sword domain had made contact with Hellion Ba's descending figure and was promptly torn asunder by his black sword, both of Su Shizhan's eyes emitted a cold flash of light. The sword in his hand abruptly flew out of his hand, floated in front of him, and then began to spin at a great speed. A huge vortex of wind swiftly formed as the sword continued to spin rapidly, growing bigger and bigger. Divine. Wind. Sword. These 3 words were slowly and deliberately spoken by Su Shizhan in a deep and low voice. Just when Hellion Ba's black sword was only 5 meters away from the top of his head, both his hands abruptly pushed forward. The long sword brought the huge vortex of wind along with it as it suddenly flew out, and it aimed directly for one of the 9 figures that Hellion Ba had manifested. What? Hellion Ba's heart leaped in fear. The 9 figures he had manifested were naturally not all real because even though his original body was that of a 9-headed demon snake, with his original body having 9 heads, it definitely did not mean that he could manifest 9 bodies. And of these 9 images, only 1 was real, the other 8 were just there to disrupt his opponent's senses and state of mind. Yet Su Shizhan's sword was flying in the direction of his real body. Ah, that's how it is. He used the stellar wind sword domain to probe which was one of the images was Hellion Ba's true body. Yun Che said in understanding, this sword domain is very different from normal domains. Not only does it need the support of profound energy, it also needs the infusion of strong sword intent, and from the feedback he obtained when all 9 Hellion Ba's made contact with the sword intent infused within this sword domain, Su Shizhan instantly figured out which one was the true body. Episode 99 is end here. Next episode coming tomorrow. Thanks for watching.